All right, boys and girls, so first things first, what I'm going to show you guys here is a picture off the bat. This is basically a visual representation chart of every legend in Brawlhalla. This one does not have Reno in it, but we'll still talk about it a little bit. And the current weapon combinations that are currently in the game. Obviously that there are 13 weapons in Brawlhalla, including axe, hammer, sword, orb, scythe, lance, greatsword, guitars, blasters, gauntlets, cannon, spear, and bow, with the newest ones being greatsword and orb. So there's a lot of data and a lot of information we're going to be diving through, but I have it constructed obviously on this beautiful chart I was able to get off Reddit, and then through my own independent stuff, which you're about to see here as well. So just with a visual representation of this, we're going to start off with the current weapon combinations that there already are and the amount of weapons that are left to complete the full kit of that weapon. What does a full kit of that weapon mean, Rain? Well, I'll tell you guys. It basically means, for example, like axe. Axe is, you know, axe sword, axe hammer, axe blasters, axe spear, axe lance, axe guitars, axe bow, axe gauntlets, axe scythe, axe cannon. The only two weapons that axe doesn't have is axe orb and axe greatsword. So for a weapon to have a full kit, it would have to have all 13 weapon combinations, technically 12, because you can have a mimic where it's like XX, right? Although that would be cool, you can't have that. So that's what a full kit is. Now, no weapon in the entire game does have a full kit, but you are going to see ones that have, you know, an X1 or X2 on the top two. So diving into the format that I have up here, I'll explain everything too. So what you're going to see over here, guys, is axe, hammer, sword, orb, scythe, lance, greatsword, guitars, blasters, gauntlets, cannon, spear, and bow. Now within this, it has every possible weapon laid under each and every single one, and then it has quotation marks against the combos that it currently does not have in the kit. So for example, axe does not have orb and greatsword, hammer only doesn't have scythe, sword only doesn't have an orb doesn't have sword, lance, guitars, axe, bow, cannon, or greatsword, scythe doesn't have hammer, guitars, bow, cannon, or greatsword, lance doesn't have gauntlets, cannon, orb, guitars, or greatsword, greatsword doesn't have blasters, spear, lance, guitar, or it has guitars, doesn't have axe, bow, gauntlets, scythe, cannon, orb, guitars doesn't have lance, scythe, and orb, blasters only does not have, in fact, greatsword, gauntlets doesn't have lance, or greatsword, and then cannon doesn't have hammer, spear, lance, bow, scythe, orb, greatsword, and then spear doesn't have cannon and greatsword, and then bow doesn't have scythe, cannon, orb, or greatsword. So now this is supposed to be a 2. Now what you're going to see at the top here, guys, okay, is basically the X2. So it's like, this means there's 2 combos axe doesn't have. X1, hammer doesn't have 1, sword doesn't have 1, orb doesn't have 7, scythe doesn't have 5, lance doesn't have 5, greatsword doesn't have 9, guitars doesn't have 3, blaster doesn't have 1, gauntlets doesn't have 2, cannon doesn't have 7, spear doesn't have 2, and bow doesn't have 4. So now when we take this data, okay, we're now going to dive into this part right here, which says in order of greatest to least possibility of containing the weapon before legend variable. I'll explain what that means in a minute here, but basically all this is this ranked in order of basically the weapons that have the greatest need for a new weapon in the game, as compared to like hammer or sword, who only have 1 weapon left to complete their kit. So in order currently before legend variables, which I'll explain: greatsword, cannon, orb, lance, scythe, bow, guitar, spear, axe, sword, hammer, gauntlets, and blasters. So basically what this means up front is that greatsword is the most likely in this method before the legend variable to be the next weapon that we are going to receive. Now I'll dive in a little bit more. Now, the legend variable is what we're going to get into next, but before we get into that, we're going to get into the legend weapon kit full cycle release. So, Rain, what the hell does this word mean? Well, you have the most recent legend release to the oldest legend release, and there actually is a bit of a pattern that Brawlhalla does with this. In order to see what the least, legend is to the most released legend, all you have to do is go into a ranked lobby, and then before your crossover skins, you're literally just going to scroll here. So, like, it goes Reno, Magyar, Mako, Jaehyun, Onyx, Volkov, Vector, Petra, Thor, Fate, Dusk, and then yeah, that's the full cycle. So what do I mean by full cycle? So basically every weapon in the entire game that has been released. So throughout all these legends here, every single weapon in the game has been released in some way or form into all the legends. So that's what that means there, and we're gonna go down into a little bit of of a little bit of an explanation about what that has to do with the next weapon prediction. So obviously Reno was the most recent legend, Blaster's Orb. Magyar was before that, Greatsword Hammer. Then Mako, Katar Greatsword. Jae-Yun, Greatsword Sword. Onyx is Cannon Gaunts. Volkov, Axe Scythe. Vector, Lance Bow. Petra, Orb Gaunts. Thor, Orb Hammer. Fate, Orb Scythe. Dusk, Orb Spear. Now what I mean by the full cycle in the weapon kit, so Blaster's Orb, right? Greatsword Hammer, Katars. Okay, so that's 5 right there. Then Greatsword happens again, but we ignore that. Then you go into Sword, that's 6. Then you go into Cannon Gauntlets, that's 7, 8. Then you go into Axe Scythe, that's 9, 10. Then you go into Lance Bow, that's 11, 12. And then you skip Orb Gaunts, Orb Hammer, and then Orb Scythe, and then Orb, and then Spear. Spear is the last one. So that's 13. Okay, so that's all 13 weapons in the entire game, and that's every legend that's been released that has contained at least one of every single weapon in the entire game. Now, what is the release pattern that goes into this too? Okay, so now we're going over here. So the release pattern was that in the beginning of this, you're going to start from the top here. So from 11 to 7, they released 11 to 8, but technically it's 4 legends, right? So they released 4 Orb Legends in a row. After they released 4 Orb Legends in a row, which those were Dusk, Fate, Thor, and Petra, they then did 3 of the lowest weapon legends. Now, what that means is, so you have Vector, Volkov, and Onyx. Now, what I mean by lowest weapon legends, you had Lance, which was one of the lowest weapons. You had Cannon, which was one of the lowest weapons, and then you had Scythe. And by lowest, we're looking at these numbers up here. So this is before, so you don't really include Orb because Orb came out with 4 in a row, and it's like their cycle excluding Orb, and it was before Greatsword. So that means that both Lance, Cannon, and Bow were all the lowest at the time before that as well, at 4, 5, and then Scythe at 5, and then Axe was at 3, but it went to 2. So basically the gist was they wanted to get something for Scythe, they wanted to get something for Lance, they wanted to get something for Bow, and then for Cannon as well. And they did Cannon with Gauntlets to move that down to 2, and then they did Axe with Scythe to move Axe down to 2 as well. So that was with that cycle as well. Now that's a very, very intriguing thing that they would do with that. Now, the one that kind of took me by surprise a little bit is after that, they implemented Greatsword, and with what they did before with Greatsword, they obviously did 3 Greatsword legends in a row where they did Jae-Yun, Mako, and Magyar. Now, the very intriguing thing with this is that with Jae-Yun, they released Sword with Jae-Yun. So Sword brought it all the way down to 1. There's only one combination of Sword left, which goes to Orb. Then they did Sword Katars, which Katars ended up getting into this because Katars hadn't had a cycle at all, and it was a very long time through Katars. It was actually the longest between any other legend in the entire game besides Blasters for Katars to get released. So that's why they then matched up Katars with Mako with Greatsword. And then you go into Magyar, who Hammer was at 2, but after it got Greatsword, it brought Hammer down to 1. So what you can see here is that what they're trying to do right now is they're going through this cycle currently, and then which led into Orb, right, which was the next one, which was surprising, but it then went into the longest released weapon, which in fact was Blasters, which you don't see at all on this entire list besides Reno here. So, and that brought Blasters down to 1 now as well. So what this means is, right, I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you guys, and if you got to rewatch the video, you know, once we get through everything, it'll make a lot of sense. But just to break down in simple terms of everything that's going on right here, okay? This is the release pattern. This is the probability and the amount of weapons that are left in the entire kit. So the higher the number, the greater the probability, right? Makes perfect sense. And then you take the release pattern. So then you also have to take the factor of how long has it been since this weapon was put on a legend in the entire game. So then when you come back down here, right, this is in order of greatest to least possibility of containing the weapon before the legend variable. So the legend variable is over here. Everything up here in the legend variable is just what weapons a legend has and how long ago were they released. So after the legend variable, this is what the order goes to, okay? So Greatsword becomes number 1, so it stays number 1 at both. So it's about basically a 99% chance that we're going to get a Greatsword legend. I mean, it makes by far the most sense that we get another Greatsword legend. Then number 2 is Spear. Now the reason it's Spear over here is because it shows that they're most released of Blasters, Hammer, and Sword. It shows that like they really don't care about how much is left in the kit as long as there's at least, you know, where it leaves one option left for the weapon, that they'll still release it no matter what. So the reason I say Spear here is because now Spear coming on Dusk over here at 11 is the least weapon to have been released in the longest of time. You've had 10 legends come out with every single possible weapon in the game besides spear. So spear is on deck for the next weapon to be released, and that's why I believe spear now moves up to the number 2. Followed then by cannon. Cannon becoming one. It was released with onyx, which was in 5. So what you'll notice here is that with Volkov having axe scythe and then Fate having Scythe Orb, that was only 3 legends in between them launching another legend with Scythe. So Onyx was released approximately 4 legends ago, which means that in theory it should open up to where they could actually use cannon again on another legend. And with cannon being an X7, which it is basically the highest in the game, which this is crazy. You guys know cannon has the exact same amount of weapons needed in its kit as Orb does. That like blows my mind. That absolutely blows my mind completely. So that moves cannon up to 3. And then 4th probability of this is going to be Lance, with the least legend that has been released being Vector, which was 6 legends ago, followed by the need for it being 5 in its kits, including Gaunts, Cannon, Orb, Katars, and Greatsword as well. And then just going down the list here, a lot of these really don't matter as much. You have Bow, Gaunts, Axe, Sword, Scythe, Katars, Hammer, and then Orb Blasters are at my 12 and 13. Basically, like, there's no chance at all that we get another Orb character or a Blasters character right now. I mean, I guess there's a very small probability, like I'd say like less than 1%, that there's a 0% we get Blasters. I would put $1 million there's no Blasters. There's probably a 1% we get Orb. It's just like with the release pattern of what they do, it would be very intriguing for them to put themselves at, let's say they release another Orb, they would then have 6 Orb legends in the game and only 3 Greatsword legends in the game. And if you look at the legend probability and play rate, Greatsword legends with Magyar and Jae Yun currently are like 2 of the least played legends in the entire game right now. So they're obviously going to release another Greatsword weapon to try to get the play rate up for those players as well. So now having all this information, you have every single weapon combo in the game, what's needed, what's left for the kit. You have the legend weapon kit, full cycle release, most recent to oldest. Then you have the release pattern for what makes things relevant, followed by the initial probability here, followed by the adjusted probability after release pattern and variable. You are left with the top 5 greatest possible outcomes here for the legend combo that is coming out for the newest legend of Brawlhalla. And number 1 is Greatsword Spear. Greatsword Spear, I'm really confident in this one. I'd give this one at least like a 70%. I'd say off the bat, like it's guaranteed to be one of these top 3, and then 4 and 5 are just like if they decide to go a different route that would still make a bit of sense. But number 1 is Greatsword Spear. Number 2 is going to be Cannon Spear. Number 3 is going to be Greatsword Cannon. Number 4 is going to be Lance Greatsword, and number 5 is going to be Lance Cannon. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. I know this was a lot of information. You guys might have to rewatch this video, but I know that for my people that really care about Brawlhalla and love this game as much as I do, you guys are gonna appreciate this video. And if you watched and you saw all the hard work and effort I put into making this, let me know your thoughts below. I've predicted the past 4 Legends weapon kits correctly, and it's been by using this algorithm and theory that I've created by myself as well. So let me know what you guys think below. Let me know which weapon combo you think is going to be in the game. Then also let me know which weapon combo you'd love to see in the game. It doesn't matter about probability or anything like that. Just let me know from your heart what is a combo you've been waiting for and begging for. Personally, I have been waiting so long for an Axe Orb or a Katars Orb legend. I feel like that would just be like one of the most fun, dope legends. And obviously, I'm really good with Katars and Axe, and so you know, Orb is a really good weapon too. So I feel like it complete my bit as a top-notch player. So I love you guys to death. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and enjoy the rest of the video. For last video's Battle Pass giveaway winner, make sure to comment below to be entered into this Battle Pass giveaway for this video. Love you out to death. Enjoy. Peace.